Yesterday I started with volatile oils, and in that we discussed about definition of volatile oils, then composition of volatile oils, what are the properties of volatile oils, how they are classified, and different examples we also discussed under different categories. So friends, today I am going to start with the extraction methods for the volatile oils. And as we discussed yesterday that extraction method, selecting an extraction method for extracting volatile oil is an important parameter that also has an impact on the yield of the oil as well as the quality of the oil. So there are different extraction methods today that are being used, but I'll be broadly categorizing those extraction methods into two categories. One is the traditional methods and the second one is the modern methods. Now, as we discussed that the traditional methods, mainly distillation is one of the oldest methods, perhaps the oldest method for extracting volatile oils, and distillation is of further three types that is largely used for extracting volatile oils, like hydrodistillation, that is water distillation, hydro steam distillation, or you can say water steam distillation, then third is the steam distillation. Now, apart from these three most commonly used distillation methods, there are other types of distillation, that is destructive distillation, which is normally carried in the absence of air, and vacuum distillation, which is I will say a bit modern method in comparison to these three distillation processes. Now, apart from distillation, as we discussed in the definition given by ISO, we also have an expression method. Again, expression methods will be further subdivided into traditional expression methods and the modern extraction methods. And in modern extraction methods, various mechanical methods have been developed. Obviously, these mechanical methods will also come under the expression methods, and these mechanical methods are sumatris and pilatris. These are the two widely used extraction methods for extracting volatile oils. Then we will have again one of the traditional methods, that is enfleurage, and after that I will be just giving a brief outline of the modern methods, specifically solvent extraction, then supercritical fluid extraction, what is solid phase micro extraction, head space trapping techniques, microwave assisted extraction, then we will have solvent free microwave assisted extraction, and molecular spinning band distillation apparatuses. So these are the extraction methods which we are going to discuss today. So starting with distillation, and as we discussed yesterday that it is the oldest technique to isolate the volatile oils, and this technique is still being used by industries or at laboratory scales. Now, distillation largely depend upon the insolubility of the volatile oils in water, and therefore it's a biphasic system is generated during the distillation. So as you can see in the picture, it is one of the primitive forms of distillation apparatus, where you can see one of the bigger container. It contains the plant material and water, and this bigger container is attached through the pipe to a smaller round bottom container, which is placed in a small tank at a level below the bigger container, and normally these tanks were filled with water, and whenever distillation was being processed in these containers, then the fumes they pass through these tubes into the collecting container, and since collecting container was placed in a water tank, these vapors get condensed, and because these vapors both contain volatile oil vapors as well as the vapors of water, and volatile oil being insoluble in water, two layers were formed in the collecting container, and from there the oil was separated. So this was the basic setup or the primitive setup of the distillation apparatus. Now, while you carry out distillation of volatile oils, there are three main physicochemical processes that occur during the distillation. First one is hydrodiffusion, second is the hydrolysis of the constituent, and third is the decomposition of those constituents by heat. Now, in hydrodiffusion, because we are boiling the water along with the plant drug, so water get absorbed through the plant cells, reaches to the localized cells where oil is present, and they cause rupturing of those cells. and since water is boiling, whenever the water comes in contact with the oil, it causes immediate evaporation of the oil, because oil is obviously a volatile oil, it will evaporate. During the hydrolysis process, when water comes in contact with the oil, there are certain constituents present in the oil which get hydrolyzed. Say for example, oil who are having esters in them, they get hydrolyzed into alcohols and acids. Since distillation is carried out at almost 100 degrees Celsius, because we are boiling the water, certain constituents also get decomposed by heat. So all these three processes, they basically occur simultaneously in a very short span of time, and they have a great impact over each and other. So as you increase the temperature, the hydrodiffusion will increase. As the hydrodiffusion will increase, it will cause hydrolysis. As the hydrolysis occurs, then obviously since we are increasing the temperature, the decomposition of the components will also increase. Again, if you are increasing the time of distillation also, then again the diffusion process will increase, leading to hydrolysis and decomposition of various constituents. So that's why I said that all these three processes, they go simultaneously and they have impact on each another. So in order to obtain a better yield in terms of quality, then there are few precautions one can always take while distilling the oils from the plant. You have to maintain temperature as low as possible during the distillation. Now the temperature should be enough so that the evaporation continuously takes place. So we have to just maintain that temperature at which the evaporation continuously takes place, and then use as little water as possible. Now the major function of the water is to rupture those cells and to pass into the pass through the membranes of the plant cells and rupture the oil cells and carry the vapors of the volatile oil towards the collecting container. So the use as little as possible water as possible means that you have to use sufficient amount of water that just causes, or that is enough to submerge your drug material. So there is no need to take excess of water while distilling the plant material. Only that much water is enough that will submerge your plant material. Then thoroughly comminuted the plant material and pack it uniformly before distillation. And this is a very basic principle, because we know that as soon as we decrease the particle size of a plant material, the extraction efficiency obviously increases. So this is nothing but we are decreasing the particle size, we are powdering the drug material and then packing it uniformly before the distillation. So these steps basically help in improving the quality as well as the yield of the volatile oil. Now coming on to the first distillation technique, that is water or the hydro distillation, and as we discussed, it's an oldest technique, and at laboratory scale Clevenger apparatus is largely used to distill the oils, and you can see the picture or the setup of Clevenger apparatus in picture A. You can see the round bottom flask is having the plant material and it is placed in a heating mantle, and to the round bottom flask is attached the Clevenger apparatus. Now on the picture B, you will see the specifications of the Clevenger apparatus that are prescribed by WHO, and you can see in the picture that the two vertical tubes, one is the tube that is attached to round bottom flask, and the second tube is having the condenser and the collecting tube. Now these two vertical tubes are attached to each other through an oblique tube in the center, which is having a cup shaped apparatus attached to it. Now when the distillation starts, the water starts boiling, it will carry the vapors of the oil along with the water vapors. They will pass through the tube A, first vertical tube, and they will move in the upside direction, and through the upper connecting tube they will enter into the condenser, where both the vapors of oil and water, they will condense and they start getting collected in the collecting tube. Now the collecting tube and this oblique tube, which is connecting both the vertical tubes, is filled with water. Now you can see in the picture A that this is a complete closed system. So if water evaporates from RBF, you cannot add water to it. So if you want to add water, then you have to stop the distillation, you have to remove the Clevenger apparatus. So in order to have a continuous distillation process, then this oblique tube role comes into play. And since I told you that this tube is filled with water, so as the water evaporates from RBF, gets condensed, so the amount of the water that condensed from the condenser, it enters into the collecting tube, and the same amount of water through this oblique tube and enters back into the RBF. So I will explain this process, what this process is known as, in the subsequent slides. Now coming back, Clevenger is largely used, or this hydrodistillation is largely used to prepare ether. Ether were the perfumes that were used in yesteryears by so many years back, and they were largely used for cosmetic purpose only. Now the major advantages of water distillation is that it's a very inexpensive technique, both in terms of the apparatus used as well as the solvent. Apparatus you have seen, it's the Clevenger apparatus, or if you are using this water distillation at a larger scale, then also you will be just needing two vessels, one larger one and one smaller one. So the overall cost of setting up a distillation apparatus is less in comparison to other techniques. Vis-a-vis, the solvent which we use is water, and water is the cheapest and the safest solvent known today, and that's why it is considered as an inexpensive technique. Now during the distillation, water continuously is boiling, and that is why it helps in continuous motion of the plant material, which prevents the formation of the lumps during the distillation, and that is why the distillation is having a good efficiency. I will say not very good in comparison to the other methods, but yes, because lumps are not formed, because water is continuously boiling, which keeps on moving the plant material, thereby preventing the formation of lumps. That is why the extraction efficiency is improved. Now coming on to the disadvantages. Now complete extraction is not possible. When I say complete extraction is not possible, there are certain constituents which require higher boiling points, more than 100 degrees, and those constituents do not get distilled out when you are using water distillation, because you have to boil the water and you cannot go beyond 100 degrees in water distillation, and again you have to keep the temperature low, that is below 100 degrees, in order to get a good quality oil. So sometimes the extraction is complete extraction is not possible. Second major disadvantage is that this process is not suitable for thermolabile constituents, because these type of constituents get degraded during the distillation process. Like certain esters are partially hydrolyzed, and sensitive substances like aldehydes, they tend to polymerize whenever the distillation is being carried out, because you are heating the mixture continuously. Then another disadvantage, the high boiling and somewhat water soluble constituents like phenols cannot be completely vaporized or require prolonged extraction, thus sometimes become uneconomical. This is what I was discussing when I said that sometimes complete extraction by this process is not possible. This is only because the high boiling compounds or the water soluble compounds, they do not get completely distilled off. Therefore the complete extraction is not possible, and you have to go for prolonged extraction, which further increases the risk of degradation of the components, and sometimes the whole process becomes uneconomical. Next we have is the water and steam distillation. This is a slight modification of the hydrodistillation, and in the picture you can see that the plant material is placed on a mesh, and below the mesh is present the water, which is continuously heated, and as we boil the water, the steam rises and it passes through the mesh and it comes in contact with the plant material, and since steam is having higher latent heat than water, it immediately ruptures those oil cells present in the plant parts and liberates the volatile oil, which get evaporated, and the vapors of water in the form of steam as well as the vapors of the oil, they move upwards, and through that red tube they enter into the condenser, where both the vapors get condensed, and then the condensate is collected in a collecting vessel. And since oils are insoluble in water and most of the oils are lighter than water, they form an upper layer, and from there you can easily collect the oil and you can easily separate the water from it. So this is just a modification. Here we are not boiling the drug with water, we are just extracting the oil with the help of steam that is generated by the water within the same container. Now the major advantage of this technique is it provides a better quality oil because the plant material is not in direct contact with water. So therefore the hydrolysis aspect or hydrolysis part of the water distillation is being taken care of in this water and steam distillation. Cohobation is another process which can be attached to the water and steam distillation as well as the hydro distillation. Though this process can be used in all the three types of distillation, but cohobation is widely used in water and steam distillation process as well as in the water or hydro distillation. Now cohobation is nothing but the recirculation of the distillate water, and as you can see in this picture, this is a pictorial representation of water distillation or the hydro distillation. You can see that plant material is being boiled in the water, and with continuous stirrer has been attached to it. The vapors of the oil and water, they are passing through the white tube and enter into the condenser where they get condensed, and as you can see in the collecting chamber or the collecting container, oil being lighter than water is forming the upper layer from where it is separated, and the water through a cohobation system or the cohobation pump is being recirculated back into the distillation container. So if we go back into the Clevenger structure or the Clevenger apparatus structure, you can see there is an oblique tube which I told you. This oblique tubes helps in cohobation process. So whatever water condenses in the collecting tube, same amount of water through this tube passes back into the RBF or the distillation container. So this is all about the cohobation process. Now coming on to the other advantages of water steam distillation process, one is as I told you, better quality oil is obtained because the hydrolysis is less in this type of extraction method. Along with this, since this process is carried out with the help of steam, higher yield of the oil is obtained. Second point is the components, again they are less susceptible to hydrolysis and polymerization because we are using steam, you are not directly boiling the plant material into water. And the third point states that steam and water distillation is faster than the water distillation, so it is more energy efficient because steam is having more latent heat in comparison to water. Therefore the overall distillation process is much faster in comparison to the simple hydro distillation or water distillation, and therefore this process becomes more energy efficient. Now coming back to the disadvantages of this process, now we are just boiling the water and the steam is rising which passes through the plant material. Therefore that steam which passes through that plant material has a very low pressure, and therefore the oils or the oils having high boiling range constituents, they require greater quantity of the steam for vaporization and hence longer duration of the distillation, which obviously sometimes becomes uneconomical. And during the steam distillation, sometimes plant material also gets wet because as soon as the steam comes in contact with the plant material, some of the steam get condensed and the plant material becomes wet. And once the plant material becomes wet, the overall distillation process sometimes get slow because first now the steam has to first evaporate that water from the plant material and then it will evaporate the oil. So overall process sometimes becomes slow if the steam gets condensed or the plant material gets wet during this process. Now the third type of distillation is the steam distillation, and as you can see the setup of the steam distillation, you can clearly see the difference between the steam distillation and water and steam distillation. Here the steam is being generated outside the distillation container, and once the steam is generated, the steam is then passed into the distillation container where plant material is placed on a mesh. Now this steam passes through again through the plant material. Rest of the process is quite similar as that of the water and steam distillation, but the only difference is the steam is being processed or steam is being generated in a steam generated outside the distillation container. Now, what are the advantages of steam distillation? The amount of steam, since it is being generated outside the distillation container in a separate container, one can easily control the amount of the steam as well as the pressure of the steam by which you have to pass that steam through the plant material. So, this is one of the biggest advantage of only steam distillation. Now, since steam is generated in a boiler, the plant material is heated at a temperature not more than 100 degree and consequently less thermal degradation is there. This also happens in the water and steam distillations. And this process is the most widely acceptable process by the industry for the large scale oil production. Since the steam distillation process can have a very good scale up method, so you can easily set up an equipment or a system having larger quantities, and therefore this method is widely acceptable and a widely accepted process by the industry for the large scale oil production. Now, coming on to the disadvantages of only steam distillation, since you can go for a scale up of this method, much higher capital expenditure is required, which makes this overall process somewhat uneconomical. And sometimes if you are extracting out low cost oils with this technique, then also this technique sometimes become uneconomical. But nowadays industries are using this technique widely to extract even some low cost oils, to overcome the labor orientation, to overcome the time duration or the time which is involved in other types of distillation. So to overcome, they are start using this process. Now, the next type of distillation is the destructive distillation, which is used in some special cases, and as I told you that it is carried out in absence of air. It is mainly done to extract oil from wood or the resins, and the wood or resins, when heated in the absence of air, the decomposition of the tissues takes place and number of volatile compounds are driven off, or you can say distilled off. And whatever volatile matter is condensed, it is separated into two layers: an aqueous layer containing wood naphtha, which is generally methyl alcohol, and pyrogenous acid, which is a crude acetic acid. This is one layer, and the second layer is of a tarry liquid, which is in the form of pine tar or juniper tar and other tars, depending upon the plant material or the wood you are using. So if you are using a pine wood, then it will form a pine tar. If you are using a juniper wood, then it will form a juniper tar. So depending upon the type of the plant material you are using, you will get a similar kind of the tarry liquid. Next we have is the vacuum distillation, and it is generally used for extracting volatile components having higher boiling points, but can also be used for lower boiling point volatiles. Since you are applying the vacuum basically decreases the boiling point of the solvent or the oil, which further increases the extraction efficiency as well as the quality of the oil, because you are carrying out now the distillation under vacuum and at a very low temperature. Therefore, it also avoids the thermal degradation. Next we have is an expression method, or you can also call it as cold expression method. This was all about distillation. Now we move on to the expression method, and as I told you that these expression methods are also categorized into two broader categories: traditional methods and the modern methods. Now the traditional, there were two methods. One is sponge method and second is Scodella method. In sponge method, the peels of the citrus fruits were separated by a knife known as rastrello. Now before we move further, these expression methods are largely used to extract oils from the citrus fruits. So once these peels are separated from the citrus fruits, they are rubbed on a clay brick, and they are continuously washed with water. Now this oil and water mixture is being absorbed on a piece of sponge. Because you are continuously washing the rubbed material, it will pass on, wash down to a piece of sponge where it get absorbed. So once the sponge piece gets saturated with the oil and water mixture, it is squeezed and that mixture is separated from the sponge. And that mixture is allowed to stand for some time, where it causes separation of oil and water, and from there you can separate the oil. The only disadvantage of this method is that it's quite time consuming. Than the oil obtained by this method is having more of a fruity odor rather than its natural fragrance. Next traditional method is the Scodella method, and this was slight advancement of the sponge method. Here we take a bowl having raised blunt ends, and this bowl is attached with a funnel at the bottom. So the peels of the citrus fruits are rubbed on these blunt ends and is continuously washed. So the water and oil mixture washes down through the funnel into the collecting container, and where the oil is separated from the water. Again, the disadvantage is it's a very slow and manual method and labor oriented method, having a very low yield. Then further modifications were done in the expression method, and the modern method is the Éculé method. Though Éculé also is, I will not say it's a recent method, but in comparison to sponge and Scodella methods, it's a new method. Now here we again, you can see we have a funnel like apparatus having pointed projections on it, and it is attached through a hollow tube below. So the peels of the citrus fruits are rubbed on these pointed projections, thereby rupturing the oil cells or the oil glands that are present in the peels, and it is continuously washed with water, and the water oil mixture passes down through this hollow tube into the collecting container, where the oil is separated from the water. Now this Éculé's method or these expression methods have been mechanized, and one of the method is Pilatres method, where the peels of the citrus fruits are feeded through a hopper, have an Archimedean screw inside, you can see in the picture, and the walls where the screw is rotated, they have abrasions on the surface. So when the peel comes in contact with these Archimedean screws, they start rotating, and this causes rubbing of the peels on the abrasive walls, which cause rupturing of the oil glands, and the oil is continuously being washed off these screws, and the washings, water and oil is collected below from where the water is separated. And the second mechanical method which is widely used is Sfumatres method, and this equipment consists of a metallic chain that is drawn by two horizontal ribbed rollers, and these rollers lead to the pressing rollers which have abrasions on their wall, and these abrasions again they basically cause the rupturing of the oil glands, thereby releasing the oils, which is continuously washed with the help of water into the collecting container, from where the water is separated from the oil and oil is separated. So friends, I'll stop here, and in the next lecture I'll continue with the enfleurage method. Thank you.